Hello learners, welcome to our series on GS paper 4 Ethics, Integrity and Aptitude. Today we are going to see a topic in unit 6. We'll see a topic in unit 6 which is called Laws, Rules, Regulations and Conscience as a source of ethical guidance. Now I have divided this session in two parts. The first part will be discussing laws, rules and regulations, and then we'll link it to conscience, right? We'll not study these two things together and you will see why I have differentiated them, right? So let's start. First and foremost, of course, before understanding anything, before understanding the analysis of any topic, you need to understand the definitions that are there in the topic. So the first definition that we are going to start with is law or act. Definition of law or act. Right? So it has 5 parts. Let us see them one by one. The first part is, it is a way of conduct, right? It's a way, the law is a way of conduct, right? But who tells that conduct? An authority, right? And who has to follow that conduct? A subject. Subject means a citizen in the country, right? And of course, those rules of conduct, they are applicable only in the territory of that country. And if you violate those rules, then what would happen? Some form of punishment would be given. So there is a penalty. So these are the 5 parts of a good law. Now, laws are formal in nature. That means they are declared properly and they are an outside source of ethical guidance, which means there is something that that is internal and informal, and that is conscience. So if we see here, formal, right? So informal and inside source of ethical guidance is conscience. So that is why I told you before that I have separated this session in 2 parts. So if we see examples, I think many of you can recognize these examples. These are just daily life examples. Traffic laws. Many people break traffic laws like signal braking or coming from the opposite side. Now, India is such a place that, funnily enough, if you're driving on a single lane road, in the sense it's only going on one direction, even there, if you want to cross, you have to look at both sides, right? So people break a lot of traffic rules, and that is covered under Motor Vehicle Act. Similarly, for consumer complaints, we have Consumer Protection Law, and then there is Companies Act. Right? Then one of the important innovations in the past 10 years about justice care, juvenile justice care is Juvenile Justice Act 2015. Now remember this thing, that law-making is a thoughtful exercise. As you know, if you have read your polity till yet, and I am assuming yes, because ethics, you're studying ethics. So you must have done your basics of polity. So you know Parliament creates the law, right? And of course, at state level, state legislative authority. So point is, the law is created in a thoughtful way. It is not something which is created on whims and fancies of people. Whims and fancies of people, right? So this is why it is a source of ethical guidance, right? Now, what about rules and regulations? We have to clarify something before we go on and see the definitions or differences between them. Ethically speaking, they both are the same things. That means rules and regulation are at par with each other, and they both are equal in terms of importance in ethics with law. So in terms of ethical competence or ethical angle, law, rules and regulations, they are similar things. So if you're breaking rules or regulations, they should have the similar ethical impact on you as breaking a law, right? So we've discussed this. Now in the Indian context, law is made by the lawmaking body, and subordinate legislation, which is rules and regulation, it is made by the bureaucracy, right? So legally they are different, but for ethical purposes, we are going to treat them at par, right? There should not be any confusion about this, because legally, yes, of course, they are different things, and we'll see that. But then again, this is not a GS2 paper, right? So if you go in such dimensions, you will waste your time. Ethically, these three have the same ethical advantage and disadvantage and applications. Now, this is something which is called smart study. This is not something which you will find in a book. This is, of course, the teacher of the, experience of the faculty, right? That will tell you such things. Okay. Now, laws are, of course, made of rules and regulations. So, laws, then rules and regulations. Or we can say something like this. Rules and regulation. These are laws, then rules, then regulations, right? Now, let us see the difference in brief. See, rules and regulations, they are different legally, right? So, we are going to see that. By nature, law is created by Parliament, and because of which it cannot be comprehensive. Why? I think you know this. I'll just explain it in very brief manner. See, the thing is, if Parliament starts creating every rule for every law, it will take a long time to make the law comprehensive. So what happens is, Parliament gives a skeleton, right, to the bureaucracy. Okay, we have given you the law, we have allowed these things and we have not allowed some things. Now, according to that, you are making rules and regulations. So this is why rules and regulations are necessary. Now, laws have severe punishment. One difference between rules and laws is laws have more severe punishment. Rules have a little bit lighter punishment as compared to laws. Now, regulation is something which is needed when you want to regulate. That means manage. That means increase or decrease or maintain the capacity or limits of something, but that is allowed by law. All right. If something is not allowed by law, you're not going to create any regulation on it. As simple as that. So, to manage something which is allowed by law, we have regulations. For example, sale of acid. For sale of acid, there are regulations, but it is allowed by law. Right? We have discussed this. Now, regulations are created by regulatory authorities like Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, like SEBI, like RBI. All right. Now, let us see examples. POCSO rules, juvenile justice rules, adoption regulations 2022 under Juvenile Justice Act. So, as you can see, under the Act, we have these rules and we have these, regulation and these rules, right? So, now you can, I think, understand clearly what is the relation between rules, laws, regulations, right? Now, after understanding the definition, now we come to the analysis part. See, the thing is, first thing we need, which we need to understand is why people break LRR. From now on, please remember, I'll be pronouncing this, right, rather than laws, rules, and regulations. It becomes a mouthful, right? So let's abbreviate this as LRR. So even though people know that they are not supposed to break the laws, they are not supposed to break rules. They know what rules are there in the country, right? We are not talking about people who do not know what laws exist. We are talking about people who know. Still, they will break the law. Now, why? Right? So that is the reason, and studies have found out following few reasons. First is, if there is a certain law and it does not address people's concern properly, then people tend to go against the law, right? And this was done in civil disobedience, that is salt satyagraha, right? Second, pleasure over pain. People focus more on their short-term gratification and short-term satisfaction rather than focusing on societal values and benefit for the society. People become selfish, and that is the reason there is a lot of corruption. I have sometimes experienced that people have thrill when they break the laws, right? Many times you will find people are breaking traffic signal rules and they are enjoying it, right? They swing like this, they ride their bikes like this, right? So there are some terms for these people, right? That is too informal for this lecture, but the point is, such people enjoy that. They get gratification, satisfaction from this. Then there is greed, of course, that leads to corruption, very simple to understand. Then there is a thing called innate values. Innate means internal values. Now there is a USA Navy SEAL, ex-Navy SEAL, Mr. Jacko Willink. Now I saw his interview once, and he said that when he grew up, he had friends who were naughty like him, right? They used to break rules and stuff like that. Not very disciplined people. But he had the courage. He had a value called courage, because of which he chose the path of discipline. That means he went to the army. He joined the army. But some of his friends did not choose the path of anything, like anything legal, and they ended up in jail. So he told this story, and this is something which we can draw some conclusions from, right? So what is the solution for people who do not follow the laws, rules and regulations? Of course, value education. That means you teach the child from their birth what they are supposed to do and what they are not supposed to do. Even Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, our honorable ex-president, he also focused on this, and even UPSC asked something like this. The thing is, people just teach. Once they have taught the child to do something or not to do something, and then they leave it at that. But that is not the right thing. The value education needs to be reinforced, right? Every few years, the child needs to know what it's not supposed to do, right? Now, there was a study done which told that people who are involved in organized crime, they did not feel any remorse. That means any sadness towards what they did. That means they did not realize the effect of their crime. All they were focused on just making the money, right? They did not ever think of what was the harm done by their actions. So a study said that they do not know what is the harm done, right? All right, let's move ahead. So what is the need or importance of LRR? See, humans populate the earth with other living beings, and humans, because ethics are just for us, not for animals. So humans on earth, they interact with each other. Humans are social animals. You and I are interacting right now. And the thing is, when we interact, we need some certainty that if I do something, you will also do something in return, like a contract. But if there is no contract, then I would have no motivation to do something, right? So people interact with each other, and that interaction needs some form of control, so that there is some predictability and certainty, right? Humans also want freedom from control over them. They want to grow, they want to flourish, they want to express themselves creatively, and this thing also needs less rules. But then again, zero rules will lead to something else, which we'll see. Now, freedom, I think you can relate this with straight away independence, right? So humans have this nature, but what if all are free? What happens then? Think about this. If there is no rule, no government, what will happen? Right? Something like a post-apocalyptic world, which is shown in zombie TV serials or movies. So what happens when there are no rules? There is no government. Anarchy happens. That means there are no rules and absence of government. So everybody does what they want, which is not good for human society or progress, right? It leads to chaos. Correct? So we need laws, rules and regulations for human progress, for justice, right? So solution is, like I said, rule of law. For example, League of Nations was formed after World War I to keep the peace. Social contract was given by Hobbes after he saw what was done in atrocities. Then Manusmriti also says governance should be based on laws, right? I hope you understand this. Let's move ahead. Now, how does LRR act as a source of ethical guidance? Now, simply if we see, laws stop you from doing something. They stop you from doing wrong things. Laws want to maintain social harmony. They want to reduce chaos, as we have seen in the previous slide. So the point is, the laws, they bind you to do something, right? For example, Prevention of Money Laundering Act has stringent punishments. But if we compare with ethics, in ethics you have a choice, follow or not follow. There are no legal punishments for breaking ethical rules, right? Now, coming to the second point, objectivity. Now, if you want to punish people, like I've talked about punishment here, if you want to punish people, you cannot punish based on subjective reasoning. Subjective means my own reasoning. Let's say I'm the judge, so I don't follow any constitution or something. I'll just declare somebody guilty or not guilty based on how I find the defendant. But that should not be the case. Laws need to be objective. They should be equally. Let's say if there is a punishment for a crime, there's a punishment for a crime. Now, even if that person is a male or a female, it doesn't matter. Same punishment should be given. For same conditions, same punishment should be given, right? So this is called objectivity. But ethics are not objective, they are subjective, they are situation dependent, as we have seen before in previous lectures, right? So to punish someone, you need objectivity, you need rules, laws. For example, this is for subjectivity of ethics. One person's terrorist is another person's revolutionary. This is straight away related to the great Bhagat Singh, right, and his companions who were hanged, right, in the dead of the night. Now, for us, they were obviously not terrorists, but for Britishers, they were terrorists. So you need to understand that ethics can change from the perspective. Different people, different perspective, different ethical understanding of the same situation, right? Third point is custom. Since they are inspired from customs itself, so people refer to them while facing ethical dilemmas. Now, Kohlberg model, which we have done in Unit 1, that tells, which I have mentioned at in that point of time also, that if the child is not taught how to follow laws, right, in moral development, in the child's moral development, then they will never understand how to use laws for ethical guidance. So laws also play a role in moral development of the child. What about religion? Religion also have laws, right? Some religions allow killing and sacrifice, some religions don't. So what about those? Now again, like ethics, they can't be universal. You can follow them, but they are limited. They are not universal in nature because they are not objective, right? Okay. Now we come to the next point. Next topic, issues in following laws, rules and regulations, that is why to follow conscience. Okay, see, now we are connecting LRR and conscience. Here we have started connecting LRR and conscience, right? See, some people follow only the letter and not the spirit. For example, when the dress of KV school was changed, Kendriya Vidyalaya, when its dress was changed, I'm a student of KV, right? So when this dress was changed, my juniors, what they did was, in protest, what they did was, they did not wear the uniform properly. They would not, let's say, tuck in the shirt, right? Or somebody would just not wear proper shoes, something like this, as a mark of protest. So the thing is, we need them, or rather the issues that come in LRR is people tend to follow only in letter, right? Not in the spirit. Second, since laws are restrictive and punitive by nature, hence evolution, that means progress of law, is not, let's say, on time. For example, Galileo was an astronomer, researcher, right? So what he did was, he said that Copernicus was right in saying that Earth is not the center of the universe. The sun, the Earth revolves around the sun. Now for this, the church, that means the Christian religious organization, the church punished him, right, for house and gave him house arrest. So the point was, although he was right, but the current law did not evolve as per the requirement, even though he gave proof, right? Now actual change should come from within. This is said by, famously, by Gandhiji. So if we want to adopt the law in the widest way possible, the people should accept the law from within. right? And that is very difficult because many times laws are restrictive. Most of the time laws are restrictive, right? So people tend to not follow them. Their tendency is like that. It's very hard to make people understand the value. And here the charisma of the leader comes into play. You have seen in recent past also of charisma of political leaders. Also, Gandhiji had the charisma because he focused only on non-violence. So, for a lot of time, many people followed him, like millions of people followed him, right? So he had charisma, right? Okay. Now, there is a thing called loopholes. Let's see that in the issue. See, what happens is when there are too many laws, enforcing the laws become difficult, right? And it can lead to ineffectiveness and more crime because people exploit loopholes. And this is the reason why government of India also restricted the labor laws, right? Labor laws. They made 4 codes. I believe it's 4 codes, right? Involving everything. Now, to quote Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, he said, the more laws and order are made prominent, the more thieves and robbers there will be, right? Next, Plato also said something like this, that good people do not need laws to tell them to act responsibly, while bad people will find a way around the laws, right? Now, there is one famous quotation in Hindi. Let me read that for you. Poot kapoot to kyun dhan sanchay, poot sapoot to kyun dhan sanchay. So the point is, if you have a good child, right, and then if you have a good child, then of course they will make something of themselves. They will grow up, they'll learn, they'll be dedicated, they'll find a job and they'll earn. But if your child is not a good child and is involved in crime and has a tendency towards crime, then also even if you save money, they will splurge that money. They will not save that money. So the point is, if you have a bad child or a good child, it doesn't matter if you want to save money, right? Because bad people will find a way around the laws. Good people don't need them, right? Okay. Now this brings us to conscience, one of the most important and confusing topics of Unit 6, right? So before sharing the understanding of the topic, I would like to share some quotes. Mahatma Gandhi said there is a higher court than courts of justice, and that is the court of conscience, right? It supersedes all other courts. N.R. Pillai, who was the first cabinet secretary of India, he said the new civil servant should possess all the traditional virtues, namely efficiency, integrity, and loyalty. But the public servant of today should be one richly endowed with human sympathy and widely awakened social conscience. That means their inner voice should speak for the people who cannot speak for themselves, right? Now let us see the definition, right? Of course, we should first start with meaning and then we'll go to the analysis. See, conscience means having some knowledge of. That means you are giving yourself some knowledge, which is the moral knowledge, right? It's the knowledge that is shared with oneself and it is a moral knowledge, right? Now, your conscience is a part of your mind. That means it's something internal that tells you whether what you are doing is right or wrong. So it is the internal sense of right and wrong. Internal sense of right and wrong. For example, if you do something and your inner voice is not agreeing with that action, you will have guilty conscience. But if you do something, you take an action and your inner voice agrees with that action, that will lead to clear conscience, right? For example, if there is money on the floor, that means let's say you have gone for a doctor's appointment and there is money near the reception, let's say 500 rupees, and you wanted to buy some movie tickets, right? But if you pick it up and use it without informing anybody, and remember, and your conscience, your values are of stealing, that means Nobody taught you that stealing is wrong. And second case is against stealing. Okay, against stealing. So what happens is you pick it up and you use it. That's the first case. Now if your conscience allows stealing, you won't feel guilty, right? Won't feel guilty. But if you use it and your conscience is something which told you not to pick it up and not to use it, then you will feel guilty. So remember this difference, that your conscience is very personal to you, right? According to different people, there are different consciousness, right? So they use it according to their conscience, the actions they do according to that. Okay, right? So is it gut instinct? You must have heard about this word, gut instinct. See, it's not, because conscience is not only feeling, it is feeling plus thinking plus reason. It's feeling plus reason. Right? So it has cognitive, that means thinking part, the reason part, and emotional factor. Both are there. Gut feeling is mostly about what you feel, right? It's not based on reason, right? Okay. So consciousness involves involves emotions, and it can motivate you, right? For example, when you are feeling, let's say, down because of the preparation, let's say you have started giving mock tests and marks are not coming as per your expectation, so you can use conscience that yes, I can do it, or I have chosen this myself, I need to do this, and my marks will improve as I start revising and all that. So you can use all this mental capacity to motivate yourself, right? So this is also called moral muscle. And remember, UPSC has a habit of asking things in synonyms. So if something like this comes up in the paper, don't get confused. Let's move ahead. What is the process, right? See, this is just a definition. Let's read that. Conscience is a mental process I've discussed, that produces dictates, that means commands, by comparing actions to an agent's set of internalized moral norms, which is called morality of the person, right? So the first thing is knowledge. You need to have knowledge about what do you think, your moral norms. Then you judge, like, do I pick up the 500 rupee note or not? And then you take an action, right? Then there is a feeling. Now this feeling can be of joy, it can be of guilty, you can feel shame, things like this, right? So this is the process. All right. Now I hope you have understood conscience. Now we'll see what is crisis of conscience, and we'll see examples, and we'll see how civil servants can deal with it, right? So there are two situations which can be called as crisis of conscience. First, you do not listen. You go against your voice of conscience. For example, conscience is saying, do not pick up the 500 rupee note. But you pick it up and you use it. So you're going against your beliefs. Second, you have a mental state in which you don't know what is the right thing to do, right? This was faced by Arjun in Mahabharata. Also, one thing I would like to highlight here, as an administrator, it is not easy to follow the voice of conscience and all the time, because particularly in our system, there is a lot of corruption and unethical elements. So we need courage. That's why this paper is introduced, to make the aspirant understand all these things, right? Let's go. So what are the examples? Conscience and self-interest. Let's say, for example, you were stealing something from a shop, you liked something, and your parents won't buy it for you, so you stole something, but the shopkeeper caught your friend instead, and you did not tell anybody anything because you were fearing that you will get beaten up, right? So what did you choose? You chose self-interest. Another example is eating non-veg and liking it, and although your conscience is against killing living beings, right? So this is one example. Another example is conscience versus duty. Arjuna had this thing, the second case, like I told you, he said that although he was in war, but he did not know what to do. He was confused. So Lord Krishna said, "Do your duty, do your dharma. That you're a kshatriya, do your dharma." So, right, and do your dharma at any cost. So this resolved the crisis of conscience by him. Also, this is done by a soldier on a war front. Right. Also, another example is Ganga Jal movie. Ganga Jal movie. In that, Ajay Devgan was the IPS officer. He did not condone or support the use of violence, although he was an IPS officer, right? And in the movie also, he did the same. Next, we come to civil service, right? Why we are reading all these things? Because we need to apply that once you get into the service, right? So how we will handle crisis of conscience in civil service? As a civil servants, there are a lot of situations when your moral judgment comes in conflict with organization values, right? For example, procedural integrity versus social justice. Procedural integrity means you have to follow all the procedures that are given. So what happens is sometimes, let's say an old person comes to you and says that I live in this village and I'm eligible for the scheme, but I don't have the required documents. So that person is saying the truth, but somehow, let's say there was a fire in the house or some other reason, they have lost the document. So what to do now? Will you deny them the benefit? What will you do? Right? So these things, these are called crisis of conscience. Then there is organizational duty versus inner voice. For example, there is an order that has passed by your superiors to basically end a peaceful protest by any means, but your conscience is not allowing it. That means the order said that you can use violent means, you can use any means, but your conscience is not allowing because they're peacefully doing their stuff, right? Also, another example, you are asked to evict people from illegal shelters on government land, but people are extremely poor and have nowhere to go. Now what to do here? So again, duty versus conscience, that is inner voice. So should you give them some warning? Should you give them some relocation space? What will you do? Right? Then one of the best examples is whistleblowing. Because of crisis of conscience, when you don't understand and you see that there is some illegal activity happening by the company or by the organization, and your conscience is not agreeing to those actions, what will you do? You go for whistleblowing, right? Like Edward Snowden, Satyendra Dubey, right? So what to do? Again, if we are studying a problem, we always need to focus on the solution also, because a lot of people in the world will give you a lot of problems, but as a civil servant for India, which is a developing country, you need to provide solutions also, right? On these occasions, the person has to use their own consciousness, that is their own conscience, right, for the welfare of the larger public interest or welfare of society without compromising national interest. Now relate this to the quote I showed, right? Mr. Pillai, he said that you need to have a social conscience. So this is how you deal with these issues, right? What else? Code of conduct of the organization. Sometimes when you're not able to decide what to do the things that are allowed by the organization. Next, Gandhiji's talisman. Now he had this theory, and this was one of his most famous social thoughts. He said that if you're in a dilemma, if you're not able to decide something in terms of public service, think of the most poorest person you had seen in your life. And if you take the step, is it going to help them, right? Is it going to improve their condition? That is how you can understand and solve the crisis. Next, you can apply different theories and values like deontological. This means do your duty, yes, but there is also one concept in this which is called categorical imperative, which means if you do something, will you allow everybody to do the same thing? Let's say you support corruption, you got greedy, you supported corruption, and will it be a good thing if everybody is doing it, right? So that is how you can understand and solve the crisis. Next, utilitarianism. This focuses on maximum good of maximum people, right? For example, if you face frequent transfers due to being an honest officer, how will you justify that to your wife, to your kids, or if we reverse the genders, right? How will you justify? Or rather, I should not say genders, sexes. If we reverse the sex, how will you justify frequent transfers to your family, right? You will tell them that it is for the greater good. What about virtue? Virtues are good moral qualities. So you need to, when you're trying to solve something, solve some crisis, you can say, or you can talk to yourself like this: what would Gandhiji do? Or what would Raja Ram Mohan Roy do? Right? Or what would what would Honorable ex-president APJ Abdul Kalam would say? Something like this. All right. Next is Baha'i culture teachings. They have excellent values which you can directly write in the answers: equity and justice, mercy and kindness, treat compassionately all humankind, acting with integrity and courage. And this is one of the most important things: seek guidance. What happens is many people just keep thinking inside their own brains. They don't refer manuals, or they don't refer their seniors' advice, or they don't refer to their parents' advice. They think they know the answers, right? But the thing is, when you have arrived at a problem, you cannot solve it with the same mental level by which you created the problem. So you have a mental level, you have a mental capacity, and you face the problem. You cannot solve it with the same thing. You have to increase this, and then you come to the solution, right? Again, one more thing: how to resolve. Constitutional values can be directly used: socialism, secularism, democracy, social, economic, political justice, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, equality of status of opportunity, fraternity, dignity of the individual, national unity, integrity. So fundamental rights, TPSP, fundamental duties, and if nothing else, at least quote the preamble or use the values given in the preamble, right? So how to use conscience? See, India is a developing country, like I've mentioned before, and civil servants who get selected, they have a lot of power as compared to a normal citizen in India. Even a mediocrely rich citizen will have less authority or less reach than the basic civil servant. So the point is, they have a lot of disproportionate power as compared to a common man. So they need to learn how to use their conscience for social good, right? So second ARC said they have extraordinary power, so they need conscience. They need to develop conscience, right? And how conscience can help them? If there are some unseen circumstances, or there are some issues that are not addressed by the law, so the gap will be filled by the conscience of a person. Like even the great poet Kalidas said that in terms of doubt, when there are doubts, the nature or the thinking or the disposition of the good person can help in resolving that doubt, right? Dealing with corruption, right? They need courage to do so. Then conscience helps in dealing with conflict of interest. For example, in conflict of interest, we can take this example. Let's say there is a judge, and he is presiding over a case where his son-in-law is the accused. So the judge should have the courage and the conscience to recuse or remove himself from the case, right? So as to have a balanced hearing, right? Now let's connect with current affairs. This is basically something which I use, connecting the dots, which means you can connect the topic which you're currently reading with PYQs with related articles or related topics in your subject, in the syllabus, and current affairs. So connecting the dots with PYQs, if it was asked in previous year papers, then current affairs, then any other topic in GS syllabus. So let's connect it with current affairs. Ethical implications of nuclear weapons. See, many people who have these weapons, they say it's for deterrence. But what about the human lives? People who have these things, they will say that no, we are not never going to use it. But the point is, even once if it is used, millions of people will die, lakhs and crores of people will die. So what about that? And innocent people will die in maximum number. So human lives also matter, right? So this is an ethical issue over here. So how to create a policy that secures the country's borders but also saves human lives? Here conscience will only help. What about ethical concerns of AI? See, AI is of course helping in law enforcement and social media. It is increasing efficiency and innovation. But the point is, it has a let's say, negative implications also, like biases. It has biases. It has privacy violations. Clearly, there are violations of websites' privacy. And then there is displacement of human jobs. So, what about these things? So, everything has pros and cons. Now, how will you actually handle the technology? By reducing the cons? Where conscience will come in between? Your values. Conscience is basically made of your values, what you value, right? So use conscience to guide the responsible use of technology. You can directly use this line in conclusion, right? One example of a person following his conscience is Mr. Food Farmer. Now he is a creator who has left a 2 crore job to influence billions of Indians to eat better. Because of his efforts, he has basically left his job in USA, or I don't remember the place, but he came back to India to create awareness about food articles, mostly about sugar consumption, and because of which lot of cases have been filed on him, but things have changed for the better because of him, right? So I think with these examples you can easily understand how we can deal with the topic of LRR and conscience. How do they connect with each other? What are their definitions? I have given you umpteen examples to understand. Yes. So I hope things are clear and I hope you learned something. That is all for this session. Thank you.